Can I have your attention one more time? Just one more time from me. Honest, I think. Folks, I have been asked to respectfully request of each of you to please take your seats. We want to start this event now. Please take your seats. Thank you. Good to see you again. I'll get all your
your attention, please. Welcome.
We need your attention for the MC, please. We need your attention. Thank you.
You were able to accomplish what I could not do with the microphone. Thank you. Welcome everybody to a very special event. We are pleased to welcome James O'Keefe and Project Veritas to New Hampshire once again. Thanks to all of you for joining us here. I want to welcome you on behalf of the 603 Alliance, which is hosting this event. There is also another event with Project Veritas and James O'Keefe this evening at Dartmouth. So if you know anybody who was not able to get tickets to this because we sold out very quickly, there's an event up at Dartmouth if you're willing to take a bit of a drive, and we're expecting a pretty good showing there as well. So to kick things off, I would like to introduce Omer Ahern, one of our board members, to lead us, please, in the invocation. Omer?
Let us bow our heads, please. Dear God, maker of our beautiful Republic of the United States of America, if we can keep it, we thank you for this opportunity to gather together all of these fine people from all over the East Coast and then some. We ask you, Lord, and we thank you, Lord, for giving James O'Keefe and his team a safe trip here to New Hampshire. And we ask that you keep him safe and his team as they go to Hanover this evening to Dartmouth College. Lord, we have a big job ahead of us here in 2022. We ask you, Lord, to prepare our people and the people that are here today to use their gifts that you have given so freely to us. And we ask you to send us good candidates in order to carry out your will. Lord, we ask you to bless the food that we're about to share this evening or this afternoon so that we can use its nourishment to better do your will. Lord, we also ask you to bless our veterans and to keep them safe and keep our men and women in uniform and in the emergency services and law enforcement. Please keep them all safe. As we pray in your holy name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Omer. And next I'd like to invite Jack Kimball, one of our founding board members, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Before I do, could all veterans in the room raise your hand? Thank you all for your service. Please join me in reciting our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hoorah!
Hurrah!
Thank you. Next up, I'd like to invite Fran Wendelboe, another of our board members, to come up and make a few announcements.
Thank you, Jim. Well, first off, I want to give the biggest thank you to Diane Bitter who was the amazing woman who put all of this together. Partly from Florida, partly from up here. I have a few people to recognize. I probably will forget some of you, so if I forget you, stand up and go, what about me, Fran? First, we have former Representative Jane Cormier. We have current Representative Ken Weiler. We have Representative Jim Kofalt, who was just here speaking before me. Representative Gail Sanborn, who's back in the back. And we have the dynamic duo, Carol and Dan McGuire. We have Omer Ahorn, former representative, county commissioner. Of course, Melissa Litchfield from under the Sequence. From the 603 Alliance, we have Jenny Wilson with the 603 board. We have Don Newman with the 603 board. We have an executive counselor here. I saw her. Where is she? Well, I have Norm Silver's name right there. That sounds good. Representative Norm Silver, talked to him several times today. Karen Testerman and her husband Dave. Karen is candidate for governor. And we have over here Caroline Levitt, congressional district. That finishes my list. Did I forget anybody?
Regina Barnes. Oh.
Regina Barnes. I knew I okay, so if I didn't overlook anybody, I think perhaps we're ready for luncheon. And Diane, how do you want to go?
By table, we'll start with this.
Okay, we'll start with this table right here. And then why don't we go to this table next? And then that table, and then we'll just follow across this way and across the back. Okay? Come on.
Can I have your attention, everyone? Thank you. My name is Diane Bitter, and I have the distinct honor and pleasure today of introducing our very special guest who's here to talk with us today. It overwhelms me, James, what you have done in the last 12 years since I first met you. Just to refresh those of you who weren't there that day, although many of you in this room were, I was hosting a little luncheon at my house for Andrew Breitbart, courtesy of AFP. And who should walk in the door with Andrew but James O'Keefe? Blew me away, blew all of us away. And my remembrance of the conversation between these two giants who just sat with us and exchanged ideas and talked about the future and what they saw. It was overwhelming, and I've never forgotten it. It was very, very inspiring. And you have kept up that same pace ever since, fearlessly going where no one wanted to tread, taking all the stings and arrows that came his way, fearlessly going into the fray and tackling fraud, all of those inconceivable things that were going on in the political world. He's here now because he has a special mission which is going on tonight, which I'm sure you all know about. And yes, you do. And it gives me great pleasure again to introduce to you our favorite American muckraker, James.
Great introduction, Diane, and it's great to be here in Concord, Concord, how do I say that? Concord. Great people, amazing people, and some are good people. So I am here in New Hampshire. I am speaking at Dartmouth tonight, and it hasn't been canceled yet. That's really surprising. I'm up for anything. The Antifa tweeted about it or Instagrammed about it. Antifa, semi-threatening messages, so that should be interesting. And I'm here now with all of you, and I know a lot of you in the room. I've met a lot of you. I've spent time at some of your houses. I've spoken here, and I've had some run-ins with your various attorney generals over the last few years, which is really some of the most unique. I mean, Skip, we recorded Richard Head, a.k.a. Dickhead, 9 years ago, and I have those videos. I'm actually, half my presentation is devoted to the state of New Hampshire, because I don't know if it's something in the water here or the atmosphere, but when Project Veritas and New Hampshire combine, it's very interesting. So thank you, all of you, and the people that have supported us through the years. This has been an unbelievable last year and a half for Project Veritas. Extraordinary things have happened, terrifying things have happened as we enter this dystopian, crazy nightmare reality that we're living in the United States of America. And I'll get to all of that towards the end of this presentation, including the FBI raiding my journalists' homes and targeting us and trying to get us to stop. But at Project Veritas, we don't know how to stop. And we're defeating them. We're succeeding. So I'll get started. As some alluded to, some 12 years ago, I got started sort of this awkward, someone graduating from college, and I did all this undercover work myself. There's some photos of me back in the day. When I went to, where's Diane? Okay. When I went to your house, I was much thinner and younger. And that's me dressed as a pimp. Andrew Breitbart was my sort of then mentor, and I came to him with these ridiculous videos, which were so shocking that you didn't believe that it was actually happening, And Andrew and I worked together. This is Hannah. She was then 20. I was then 25. I'm now 37. And I went into all these offices, and Andrew Breitbart helped me release these videos in a sequential way so that the media would cover up for what they were caught doing. And then, over the next few years, I continued on with my mission. People actually sort of said, James, you don't need to keep doing this. They sort of said, one advisor said, just retire. You took down Acorn. Congress defunded Acorn. You don't need to keep doing this. And I said, well, I'm passionate about it, and I'm passionate about our mission. The mission of Project Veritas is not a political mission. Right? We're not trying to elect certain people or hurt certain people. We're just exposing corruption and abuse and dishonesty and self-dealing. These days, journalists do the opposite of that. They tend to target people who expose corruption and dishonesty, including in the last 24 hours. Washington Post reporter revealed the name of the so-called Libs of TikTok account. And it's interesting that they don't go after the government or pharmaceutical companies or the FBI or the administrative state. No, they target the people who go after those people. So we're living in clown world, really. That's the world that we live in, clown world, and that's the premise behind many of the things I'm about to show you. Clown world. Welcome to New Hampshire. Let's go. I'm going to go in reverse. I'm in clown world. I'm going to go in reverse chronological order. So I'm going to start with most recent and go back 10 years ago. All the things I've done in New Hampshire, just to remind all of you that this is the world that we live in. So this is a story we did in 2020, investigating individuals who voted multiple times. You always hear about this, voter fraud. In fact, you hear it and people say it doesn't exist. So we're just trying to show people in an incontrovertible, irrefutable way that not only does it exist, we'd like to get them admitting it in their own words that they've done it. So we looked into this, and we found this individual. A tipster told us about this, and we looked into it. This individual's name is Ashley or Helen Elizabeth on 101 Maple Street. And then we found a Vincent Joseph Marzello on 101 Maple Street. And it appeared to us through our investigative reporting techniques, that these two people are the same person. It appears as though this person had some type of alias where they were voting twice, once as a man and once as a woman. So we talked to this man. His name is Vincent Joseph Marzello. That's him. I won't tell you how we found him or how we managed to pull this off, but because New Hampshire is a two-party consent state to hidden camera record, and we don't break the law, we had to catch him when he was over the border in Vermont, where it is legal to record someone without their permission in a semi-private place. There's nobody around, so this is a lawful recording. And we got Joseph Vincent Marzello to admit that he voted twice. And what's remarkable about his admission is that he said, "And I didn't get in trouble." This is what he said.
I got in trouble because I voted twice. The cops found out because I went to get the voter ID, right? He said it's not a big priority, but or could be truthful, showed under a bunch of papers and forgot about. Who said that? The cop.
So I got in trouble because I voted twice, and the cops found out because I went to get the voter. He's referring to a voter identification card here in the state of New Hampshire. And then he said I didn't get in trouble because it could just be shoved under a bunch of papers. Let's just not enforce this law. Maybe because to enforce it would be to bring news headlines about voter fraud, right?
Right.
So we find out about this in the summer of 2020. This is recorded August 21st, 2020. And my question is, why didn't your law enforcement agencies here in your state do anything about this? In fact, we found out that they knew about it. By the way, this is the undercover journalist who recorded this man. Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson.
And then we got these documents showing that this man, actually, this is the guy you just saw. That's the guy you just saw, had put on a wig and what appeared to be a fur coat and voted as Helen Ashley. This is the same person. I, Helen Ashley, do solemnly swear, under penalties of voter fraud, that I am the identical person who I represent myself to be. So this individual lied on an affidavit, and that is why we went to him wearing the wig. And this elicited him this admission. And this was his voter identification.
Oh, wow.
That is Helen Ashley. Helen Ashley is Vincent Marzello. They are one and the same person. And they voted twice. They. I don't know what pronoun I'm supposed to use. Maybe that's why they weren't prosecuted, because of that issue. So this is a voter ID card. And then, and this is the typical Project Veritas fashion, a.k.a. Mike Wallace, 60 Minutes. This is across the street from where I am. Walk into the building of the Attorney General, the Department of Justice, with these documents and with this admission. This is around Labor Day of last year, 2020 rather. And I asked I guess it was a series of deputy attorney generals, what the hell is going on?
To create a fake voter ID card that you're aware of. I'm not aware of there being a voter card in the state of New
I mean, that's insane, because your guy, who's actually the #1 person for voter fraud, isn't even aware that there is such a thing as a voter identification card. Would you like to see a picture of the voter identification card that he has? This is unbelievable is right. You can't make this stuff up. That's why I said I'm living in clown world. Again, this is me asking this.
voter ID card that you're aware of. I'm not aware of there being a voter card in the state of New Hampshire.
This is his name. I think, does he still work there? I haven't checked.
Yeah.
So then I go speak to the police officer, that the state trooper that was, I mean, this is investigative journalism. This is what the journalists are supposed to do, like go out and catch the bad guys and talk to people, right? Instead, they're doxing people online and censoring them and playing the role of hall monitor. But this is what journalists used to do, right? They used to go out in the street and ask questions. This is us talking to the state trooper who was, I guess, tasked with talking to this Vincent Marcello character. So clearly you have a voter ID card. Then I get your then Attorney General on the phone and say, what the hell? Like, what's going on?
There is a voter ID card in the state of New Hampshire, yes.
There is so he contradicts the guy that works for him. And then after we do all of that, the man is arrested and charged with voting twice in the election. But only after I go out and confront them. Because here's the rub. Your Attorney General had all the documents and chose not to do anything about it. Right? So what does that tell you? One of the biggest comments I get, one of the biggest questions I get is, nothing ever happens to these people. Nothing ever, right? You see it all the time. No one's ever held accountable. What is accountability? What does that mean? Does that mean you want to incarcerate the people who disagree with you? That's what I've heard. Everyone needs to go to jail. Well, here's the thing. They want you to go to jail.
Check it on.
So you want them to go to jail, and they want you to go to jail. How do we have a functioning republic if both factions want the other guys to go to jail? I would submit to you it's not incarcerating the people who politically disagree with you that is accountability. It's sunlight. It's exposure. The thing that these people fear more than anything else is being exposed. That's what they fear. Let's go back to 2019. This is another guy that said he voted twice in the election.
He should not be voting anymore in Georgia. Robert Bell's ex-wife is shot.
That's his wife.
He is a man who used to break in Florida, New Hampshire, and federal laws by voting twice.
Yeah, I was down there for a funeral, and so I voted in the whole building.
Or did you early voted in Florida, and in person in the polls here in New Hampshire?
I guess I did.
So he admitted to voting twice, and he was charged with voter fraud. There's some headlines. So these are only the people that we've caught. I can't imagine the people that we have not caught. And again, why weren't they charged before I showed up? Bell admitted that he cast an early voting ballot in Florida, and he also voted in New Hampshire. So, and you know, the thing about it is that, you know, you can't even tweet this stuff without being banned, right? Because it's misinformation. To expose reality is misinformation. Man charged with voting during the 2018 election. By the way, they issued me a grand jury subpoena for doing this. This is me speaking to some people there at the Department of Justice across the street. I showed them the video before we released it, and they issued me, a journalist, a criminal grand jury subpoena. So your law enforcement officers are more interested in targeting journalists than they are actually enforcing the law. And it's only after it comes out and they're forced to do something about it. This is the subpoena they sent me. This again is in 2019. And those are the investigators that issued them to me. We'll talk more about subpoenas when I talk about the FBI raid of my home here shortly.
No, with Hillsborough County, the subpoena, it says it's from Hillsborough County, which is it's investigated with years ago. Sanders campaign for New Hampshire. They're trying to criminalize actually reporting facts and being true.
So, in this non-Orwellian world, the subpoena would read as an impolite way to invite you to help convict the criminals you've exposed. Going back to 2016, we're going back in time now to the presidential election. This is us inside your polling places in the state, talking to various workers that man the desks about how long do you have to be a resident here in order to vote? Is it an hour? Is it a day? Is it a week? What are the rules?
Exactly.
And to our shock, or maybe lack thereof, they just gave us a bunch of different rules. Here we go.
How long had to be in New Hampshire?
No, so just lie. No, just tell them that you're here indefinitely. 48 hours, there's no rule, just say that you're here forever. I mean, these are what people are saying to us on this election primary in January of 2016. So this video prompts an investigation by the Attorney General. Sounds like we're on the right track, right? Well, not yet, no. The Stephen G. Labonte, Assistant Attorney General, sends me a grand jury subpoena for me to preserve my evidence. This letter serves as a formal notice that you must statements made by James O'Keefe to Michael Cousineau, reporter with the New Hampshire Union Leader, imply that Veritas is willing to cooperate with this investigation. I, the journalist, must now cooperate with the government and give over my records, which no self-respecting ethical journalist would ever do. It's anathema to journalism ethics to give government your hard drives and notebooks, but that's what your Attorney General asked me to do, right? By the way, they would never do this to the New York Times. They could never get away with sending this letter to the New York Times. And they could never do it to the Union Leader. And they could never do it to CBS or WMUR, but they do it to me. Why? Because in their words, I'm, quote, not a journalist. What is journalism? Who decides that? And if all that the people who are, quote, journalists are doing is targeting citizen journalists who are actually doing the job the journalists are supposed to do, we're living in clown world. This is the Bernie Sanders regional field director at a bar talking about various fraud that he's committing.
Oh, so you registered in Manchester. How did you do that though? What did you do?
So the Bernie Sanders regional field director said he used his corporate address at the Bernie campaign as his domicile, which is a misdemeanor crime in New Hampshire. By the way, the late Ed Nail helped us with this investigation, helped us get this individual's information. This is crazy, he even tweeted out a picture of himself committing the fraud.
Oh my God.
He literally bragged about the fraud on Twitter. Registering to vote today like a boss. And he registered to vote using 345 Siley Road, which is the campaign headquarters address. You just can't do that. None of this would have come to light without Project Veritas and Ed Nail working together on this. None of this. So the combination of him tweeting the picture plus Ed Nail getting the document there, redacting the personal information, but clearly you can see the corporate address. Rather than prosecute this guy for committing a Class A misdemeanor, what does your Attorney General's office do? They send me another letter threatening me, right? As with the first video, we are requesting you cooperate with this investigation. So the story becomes about my cooperation or lack thereof with the government's investigation. Bless you. The New York Times would never get a letter like this, ever. The story becomes O'Keefe's lack of cooperation with the investigation. What cooperation do you need? Why don't you go get this guy to cooperate with the investigation? He's the guy doing the fraud. Then we speak to some people from Australia who are in your state. Again, you can't make this stuff up. It's like a bad cartoon on Comedy Central. These are Australians volunteering with the Bernie Sanders campaign, talking about this. Let's take a look at what he says.
There it is. Yeah, it's become fun.
So just set this up. These are Australians driving around New Hampshire. One of our undercover reporters is in the vehicle with them, and they're ripping out of the lawn Trump signs. Now, which is itself a misdemeanor. You can't do that. And they're bragging about doing it, and we get them on tape doing it.
You can choose. How do you feel?
So there you have foreign citizens coming to your state, volunteering in the political campaign, and ripping up signs out of your homes, lawns. That's a crime. And it makes international headlines. It makes Daily Mail, Brisbane Times, all the newspapers in Australia are covering it. Not a single American media organization covered that story. It made front page news in Sydney. But not a single American, no cable news outlet thought that was newsworthy. Not even Fox News. No, not at the time. No.
When they volunteered, did they pay their own way?
Great question. ALP operatives on taxpayer funded, so it was apparently paid by the taxpayers. United States trip caught up in hidden camera campaign sting, and your Attorney General sent me another letter. Yeah, I know. What? You didn't even know this. I'm teaching you something.
Well, the first one came to my house.
Oh, came to your house. Right. They're coming after you too.
Well, no, it was when you were coming to visit. They knew you were coming to visit. And they sent the guy with leather briefcase.
Oh, that's right. What was his name?
To serve papers, which gave me time to alert him not to come to New Hampshire that day.
I remember that. Murdoch was
You
his
were going to
name.
speak at the Abernathy Country Club, and we had to have you on video instead.
I remember that. Yeah, that was. We're going back in time. That was before this. So we'll get to that in a minute. The fun never ends. So I have these letters framed in my office when you walk. This is one of my proudest achievements. Because every time your Attorney General sends me a letter threatening me, I release another video. My team says, so James, what are we going to do? They're coming after us. Release another video. As with the first and second videos, you're requesting you cooperate with our investigation. It's always about my cooperation or lack thereof. By voluntarily turning over an unedited video. Do you know of any self-respecting journalist in the 20th century who forked over raw notes to the government? Of course not. You would compromise sources. You would violate your own sense of ethics. But your government thinks I should cooperate with the investigation by voluntarily. The implied threat is they'll force me to do it with guns. It's pretty remarkable. And then WMUR finally covered it. The Sanders campaign was eventually fined for what they did here. After Project Veritas released a video, a complaint was filed with the Federal Election Commission, and the New Hampshire Bernie Sanders campaign was forced to pay money for what they did. That is called accountability that you all seek. But it's only after the press. Even Vice News covered it. Bernie Sanders colluded with the Australian Labour Party, foreign government, and was forced to pay. Okay, let's go. Let's just keep being weirder. Ready to get weirder here? Have a surreal lunch? Okay, this guy, going back to 2016, his name was Dick Tracy. Dick Tracy. Here we go. That's me walking into the governor's office. What was her name? Maggie Hassan. Maggie Hassan, whatever. So I'm walking into the governor's office delivering, they say they want my hard drive, so I said, okay, fine. I'm going to come deliver you a hard drive with some of these investigations on it, but I'm going to deliver it in person. As I'm walking into the governor's office, I intercept this man with a green vest. At first, I think he's a fan. Maybe he wants a picture. Can I get a picture? You all know how much I love taking pictures. I'm being sarcastic. And I'm thinking, oh, this guy wants an autograph. No, it turns out he's with the Attorney General's office. And he hands me a criminal grand jury subpoena. I was served with a subpoena, but the remarkable thing about this man is his name was Dick Tracy. Richard C. Tracy. The first thing I noticed about the subpoena was that on the subpoena it said his name. So you got a guy. Your detective's name is Dick Tracy. I also heard you had a state rep named Richard Sweat. Dick Sweat, is that true?
Yeah.
So you got Dick Tracy and you got Dick Sweat. But that's not the only Dick that you have. I will get to that in a minute. Grand jury subpoena Ducis Techum. Richard C. Tracy, Chief Investigator, Criminal Division. You are required to take steps to ensure. Now what's interesting about that is, in 2012 I did an investigation and your Attorney General's name was Dick Head. Richard W. Head. What type of parent names their son? I get this is the 1950s, but still. And he has a middle initial W to disguise the fact that his name is Richard Head. We actually confronted Richard Head. That's Dick Head. The guy recording is you, Skip, recording me confronting Dick Head, who in 2012 issued me a criminal grand jury subpoena. So you got Dick Sweat, Dick Tracy, and Dick Head.
Very good.
This is 10 years ago. No, I'm sorry, this is 9 years ago. This is June of 2013. And because of what I had been through in New Orleans with the incarceration and jail for trying to record my government officials, I brought a whole camera crew. There were so many cameras, they'd have to arrest all of us with the big cameras on the shoulder. And I asked Dickhead about the story that we did in New Hampshire. This is in 2012. We went into these polling locations and got ballots as deceased. We said we were people who were dead. We said, here's the name, and the name is deceased, and they gave us the ballot of the dead person. Here's some footage from Fox 25 recounting the investigation.
State law says you don't need an ID to vote in New Hampshire. And this video appears to show you may not need a pulse either. Project Veritas claims it gave the names of dead people and moved them in present polling places. St. James Place? And you're Democrat.
So they handed us the ballots, even though we're not the person, and also the person is dead, which showed that the voter fraud was possible. And that's when your then governor wanted me prosecuted. They always want me incarcerated, prosecuted, jailed, killed. I mean, they can't engage in dialogue, so they just have to shut you down. Here's what this man said.
I think it is outrageous that we have these out-of-staters coming into New Hampshire, coming into our polling places, and misrepresenting themselves to the election officials. And I hope that they should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
So that's what he wants to be prosecuted. That leads us to Richard W. Head. Dickhead. Now, what's interesting about that is New Hampshire approved a voter ID law. The governor tried to veto the bill. This all happened, so here's me confronting Head.
He's not expecting us. But I'd like to get a comment on a story we're releasing next week. There's a new book coming out, it's called Breakthrough. There's an entire chapter about...
Let's see where he... Oh, there he is. Here he comes out. All right.
Mr. Head, how are you? I'm doing
He kind of looks like a dickhead. By the way, James O'Keefe being unprofessional, calling people dickhead. First of all, that's his actual name. It's true. Second of all, he's the one issuing criminal subpoenas and targeting journalists and harassing people. He sent investigators to your house. He terrorized Spencer's house. They sent a bunch of law enforcement agents to the home of Spencer Meads to terrorize his mother. So yeah, he's a dickhead.
They got him fired once and he came back.
Well, the reason it takes 3 cameras is when you're like me and you've been, had your evidence destroyed.
So this goes on. It's online, and I confront him about it, and they back down in New Hampshire. No one went to jail. They didn't prosecute any of our people. And there's actually a chapter in my book called "The Rise of Richard Head." The first book, Breakthrough. It reads like a John Grisham novel. It's a good read. It's an autobiographical book. It's not the book that we have today. The new book is called American Muckraker. So, that's just a piece of what I have been through in your state. Okay? You cannot make it up. You can't make it up. But as Winston Churchill said, it's the courage to continue that counts. It's the courage to continue that counts. So I'm now going to switch gears and talk just about a couple recent things we've done before I conclude, and I guess we're doing a book signing out there. Fast forward quite a bit, and speaking of law enforcement officers, the FBI came to my home a few months ago and targeted us. I think I have a video of this. Speaking of truth to power, this involved a diary involving the daughter of the president. Most people don't know that Joe Biden has a daughter. Her name is Ashley Biden, and she had a diary, and a source transmitted to us this diary. It was apparently abandoned. Journalists have a right to publish documents sources give to them regardless of how they're obtained by the third party, but this happens and they come to our home 10 to 12 FBI agents in November, and and here's a video that we shot in one of these homes. So people always say, James, one of the frequently asked questions is, aren't I afraid? Or shouldn't I be afraid? Or do you fear for your life? Or are they trying to hurt you? And my response to that is the biggest threat to Project Veritas is my own government. Because no non-state actor has ever done that to me. Right? When they come to your home with guns and bulletproof vests, and they had a battering ram. A battering ram at 6 a.m. in November, pre-dawn raid, and FBI, just like you would see in a movie with the blue jackets and all that, and they take all your stuff. They rummage through your home, and if you have family, if you have a daughter or if you have a wife, they will put that person in handcuffs against the wall. That's what they'll do to you. For what? Because a source sent you a document. That's insane. That's against every Supreme Court precedent imaginable, including Bartnicki v. Vopper, New York Times versus United States, you name it. It's a fundamental part of First Amendment jurisprudence. You don't execute search warrants against journalists. And if you do, you show the world the probable cause that was in the affidavit that they gave the Department of Justice. They didn't do that. They broke the law. They broke the law. And you might say, well, of course they break every law. This is different. This is different than all the other times they break the law. You know why? Because they did it to a journalist. They did it to a journalist. I know they did it to Roger Stone. I know that they've done it to a lot of people. I know the Russia stuff. I get it. But when you start putting journalists in handcuffs and confiscating their stuff, they've actually crossed a new event horizon. So these agents are in my house, rummaging through the house, looking through things. They had their hand on their gun because, what a big man you are with your guns and your battering ram, taking on journalists like you are. You've got no corruption to expose on Wall Street or in pharmaceutical companies or in the administrative agencies. No, you have to go through the home. And I have to imagine that a lot of these people were actually not horrible human beings. They were just following orders. We've heard of that before. We've read about that in history, haven't we? People following orders. But I'd like to believe that some of these men and women are actually not bad people. They might even agree with you on a lot of your political views, but they have a pension, right? They have a pension and they have a mortgage to pay. And at the end of the day, we need to find good people inside these organizations to come forward, to be brave, and expose what's going on. So this happens, and then we find out last month, this is something we discovered, that the Department of Justice went to Microsoft Corporation. This is the company that we use for some of our emails at Project Veritas, and they issued secret warrants against Microsoft to obtain 200,000 emails of Project Veritas journalists, going all the way back to January of 2020. That was 8 months before I even found out about this diary existing. What possible probable cause, if you're not familiar with criminal procedure, in order for the government to obtain a secret warrant, which, by the way, this is like used against terrorists and really bad people who might destroy evidence, national security. what probable cause would justify a magistrate judge signing that? Under every provision of the law, the Department of Justice regulations, the rules of criminal procedure, the Privacy Protection Act, all mandate that when you do this against a journalist, which by the way has never happened before, but let's assume you wanted to, you have to be transparent about what the probable cause is. They weren't. They did this in secrecy, and they issued a 2705B gag order against Microsoft from talking about it. So they got warrants against Microsoft. Microsoft shall not disclose the existence of the warrant. These are all secret documents that have now been unsealed by us. And a federal judge ruled back in November that there should be a special master to oversee this. Federal judge ruled in our favor. But they went behind the federal judge's back a month later and continued to gag Microsoft by shopping this around to different judges in New York. This is crazy. This is wild. And they're doing it to journalists. And you might say nothing shocks you. I understand. Nothing shocks anybody anymore. But this is pretty unbelievable. This is actually a new bridge that they have crossed. And we have filed motions with that federal judge, a series of documents to, it was actually so crazy that even the New York Times, who I'm suing for defamation and winning, by the way, even the New York Times was like, whoa. They were like, whoa, this is crazy. Because any self-respecting, rational human being has to look at this and go, I don't understand. First of all, before we get to the facts of the case, why does the FBI have jurisdiction over an abandoned diary? Right. That's not even a petty crime. I mean, that's like the feds don't have jurisdiction. Second of all, this is what the New York Times wrote, quote, it is highly unusual for the Justice Department to obtain the internal communications of journalists, as federal prosecutors are supposed to follow guidelines to ensure they do not infringe on the First Amendment. According to a person with direct knowledge of the matter, Microsoft had pushed back on the Justice Department subpoenas and warrants, but the government refused to drop its demands, and Microsoft handed over the information. Because of gag orders that had been imposed, Microsoft was barred from telling Veritas about the requests, the person said. And this might actually be the glimmer of hope that you've all been waiting for. This was so shocking that the ACLU came to Project Veritas' defense. Have you ever heard of that? No. Some of you don't even believe it as you sit here right now. You have to go back to the 1990s to find a case where the ACLU defended someone, quote unquote, on the right. Not that we're right wing, but the ACLU now is engaged in the business of censorship. Even they came out. Of course, they had to have the perfunctory introduction. Project Veritas is deceptive, blah, blah, blah. But they said, we're concerned that the precedent set by this case should have serious consequences for press freedom. We're deeply troubled by the Department of Justice obtaining secret warrants. Compounding these concerns, the government suppressed the information about the existence of the warrants, according to the ACLU. Also, the Reporters Committee. No friend of Project Veritas has requested the affidavits be unsealed. That sits on the federal judge's desk in New York City, where she will issue an order, hopefully soon, to unseal these warrants. And if you're concerned about judicial corruption, this judge has already ruled in our favor by signing a special master. People on the left are outraged about this. I may have found the one issue in American society where people are united on. Listen to this. These are people from MSNBC you're about to hear.
You cannot, obviously, as a First Amendment organization or anyone, directly steal something. That is illegal. But even the New York Times, that has an axe to grind here, isn't saying that that's what happened. Now they allege, or maybe they knew that it was stolen materials, but guess what? Journalists know that they're using stolen materials all the time. It's hard to see, outside of political motivation, what is the justification for the criminalizing of these entities?
So maybe these people fear it being done to them. That's what they're motivated. They're like, wait a second, Trump, DeSantis, if someone like that, it's about self-preservation. Whatever it is, we seem to have found one thing in American society where people are actually agree upon, and I would actually argue that the Constitution, the First Amendment, due process, e pluribus unum, all these incredible things that are uniquely American are much stronger than what divides us. The things that divide us, okay. But this is a glimmer of hope, right? In this crazy world that we're living in, we all need hope. And of course, they went to Apple and Google. They actually went to our security details, Gmail, Google email, and got warrants for his emails too. The United States government doesn't think it's not enough to target me and my journalists. They also targeted the people tasked with protecting my life. Obviously, to send a deterrent to anybody else out there that if they follow in my footsteps, they'll be crushed by the big thumb of the Stasi. This is not a George Orwell novel. This is not science fiction. This is not the Soviet Union. This is the United States of America. And that is why people need to be brave. That is why people need to step up. I don't care about your pension. I don't care about your daughter going to Princeton. I don't care about your private school. I don't care about your material bullshit. If you don't be brave and step up, you won't have a country. Your daughter won't graduate from Princeton. There will be no private school. There will be no white picket fences. There will be no pensions. You will enter a new version of dystopian hell you can't possibly fathom. And I'm in a unique position. I'm qualified to tell you this because I've been incarcerated. I've been put in handcuffs. I've been sued. I've had criminal subpoenas. And I've survived. And the reason I'm standing here and the reason I've survived is because I never back down. Is because I don't compromise my own sense of ethics or integrity. I don't lie to protect myself. See, that's what people do. They lie to protect themselves. They think that they speak an untruth, that their skin will be saved. You have to stand firm. You have to stand for what you believe in. And that's what I know, that there will be good people in the government to come forward. I know it will happen because right now, as I speak, Project Veritas is working with sources inside the Department of Justice. All right. The final thing I'll show you today is for the people who are not brave, for the people who may speak the truth but are not willing to consensually come public, we will hidden camera film you. We will record you in so-called private, although it's not really private, these are restaurants and public places, but we'll record you without you knowing. So if you work for the New York Times and someone asked me about this investigation, January 6th, and what's going on with the news coverage of that day, we will find you and we will film you and we will make your statements public. This is the New York Times National Security Report, who said privately that the media coverage of January 6th is, quote, over the top. Let's listen to some of the things that Matthew Rosenberg has to say.
Are you allowed to have that in front of January 6th every morning? I'm so traumatized.
This guy is saying the opposite in private of everything he's published at the New York Times. He's saying that his woke colleagues need to, quote, man up. You can only imagine how upset they must be. This is like PTSD. This is like battle shock. This is like shell shock to the woke colleagues. But this is what he's saying, Matt Rosenberg, when he does not know that he's being video recorded. He's contradicting his journalism. This is a New York Times reporter saying those traumatized by January 6th need to, quote, shut the F up. He's talking about this day. His words, that it wasn't as bad as people are making it out to be. He starts to name his colleagues at the New York Times. This is the best part. He starts to name the people he works with and says that they're effing dweebs. Effing dweebs. This is not a low-level guy. This guy's won the Pulitzer Prize for the Russia reporting, which whatever. But the bottom line is he's not some low-level intern. No, this is a award-winning, quote-unquote journalist. So anyways, this gets recorded. He also says other things about his sources in the CIA. He says the P-tape doesn't exist. So when the girl gets up from the table, I sit down in her place. She gets up, I sit down. And with the iPad, I show the guy, can I ask you about this? What exactly did you mean by this? For those of you who remember, To Catch a Predator.
Yeah.
This is like To Catch a Journalist. And one of the things he said many things, which I'll show you, but he goes, oh, O'Keefe, you got me in a bar. Like, you got me in a social situation. You know, one of the things he said. It got me in a bar. But what's interesting about that is, one of the things he literally said when the undercover person recorded him was, if you're overheard in a conversation in a bar and you're talking in public, it's fair game to be public. Unbelievable.
Wow.
In fact, he says that much of the reporting of the New York Times, he catches people in bars. And he eavesdropped on them. So this is the doublethink. Doublethink means the power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them. From George Orwell's 1984, which is the year that I was born. Quite prophetic. I did not let it go from there. I started walking with him as he left the restaurant. This guy was more cordial than many of the people that we confront. I'm sure the Antifa at Dartmouth will not be as cordial as him. But this is me asking him some questions.
I think that the people in the agencies are manipulating the journalists rather than the other way around. Like they puppet you. They feed you the stuff, whether it's true or not. It's a pleasure meeting you. Pleasure to meet you too. I'm going to go with you. Why not have you? It's not really not talking about this. We already have spoken about it privately, and I have recordings of you. That's the thing about journalism, right? You use anonymous sources. You say people familiar with them.
This is a really important point.
Yeah.
They always in the newspapers say, according to people familiar with the matter.
Yeah.
Who are those people?
Yeah.
What did they say?
Right, they make them up.
And I get anonymous sources are codified in journalism, but if you're only using anonymous sources, you have no credibility. I don't use any quote-unquote anonymous sources. I don't ask you to believe me by virtue of the fact that I'm credible. I ask you to believe me because you can see the guy's face. They ask you to believe them by virtue of their own decree they're credible because they tell you that they're credible.
Right.
When I've just shown you a video of the guy contradicting himself and contradicting everything he reports in his newspaper.
Most of your sources don't speak publicly. So why is it okay for you to do what you do, but not okay for me to do what I do? I'm going to duck in here. It's been a pleasure meeting you. Were you going to why you ducking in and rerun the pharmacy?
And he had to ducking into the pharmacy there. One more clip here. For those of you who haven't seen it, this is my favorite. It's a little hard to hear, but this is Mark Mazzetti, another New York Times deep state operative. I call them Fed boys because they're basically feds. They're New York Times national security reporters, but they work in harmony with federal agents rather than investigate them. So I sat down with Mark Mazzetti and started asking him some questions.
Mark Mazzetti, reporter for the New York Times, who is, when unable to engage in defamation, is rendered completely mute.
So I walked out of the place with him. This is important work to do because we have to put a face to the name of who these people are. So much more to show you, but I think we just sort of want to get to the book signings. There was a couple great headlines here. Dean Baquet, the executive editor of the New York Times, I'm going to read this to you. The videos you just saw immediately caused tensions to flare amongst New York Times staff. According to half dozen reporters who are granted anonymity, quote, the Times staffers told us they were upset about Rosenberg dissing their own coverage and bad-mouthing his coworkers. So people talk about what can I do, right? What can we do this is like what we can do. We're exposing them. And it's causing conflict, which is good. We want more information. We want transparency and sunlight. Baquet, that's the head of the New York Times, or he was the head of the New York Times, because this week he got removed and replaced by somebody else. Baquet, the Times staffers told us, responded by criticizing Rosenberg. for being careless and stupid. By the way, Rosenberg has yet to tweet since this in February. He hasn't tweeted once. He's in timeout. But he said that Project Veritas is trying to, quote, make our heads explode and divide the Times, and that they should not play into the group's hands. The New York Times is Project Veritas quagmire. Let me just add, there will be many more quagmires coming up in coming weeks ahead. And then there was this headline from the New York Post, New York Times Journal vid bitch slap. So this is what we do, and you all know it, but I just wanted to take you on a journey through what we're doing. People ask what they can do. We're going to be, I guess we're doing a book signing in a moment, or shortly. And American Muckraker is the name of the book. I've been on this book tour since January. It made top 10 nationwide. It's a book more focused on journalism ethics and how to do this. It's more of an intellectual foundation for journalism. I wanted to write something that would mean something after I'm gone, and obviously our mission continues to be what it is, which is to recruit brave men and women inside these organizations to go public, to not be afraid. Fear is really the problem in this country, and I don't know what people are actually afraid of. I don't fully understand, because to expose them is what we need to do. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Thank you.
I have a little gift for you, James. Jenny. This is something that Jenny Wilson has personally made for you, and I think it'd be a nice thing to have in your office. So, thank you. And if you go with Jenny, she's going to set you up for the. Do you want to talk, Jim? Do you want to talk before before James goes out? Do you want to make your announcement?
About
Yes.
Ed. Yeah. So I just wanted to briefly acknowledge a dedication that is in the program. We lost two very special people this year. You heard about one of them as James was talking about voter fraud in New Hampshire. Ed Nail was a tireless fighter for the little guy, and spent, I don't know if the guy ever slept, he spent countless hours trying to uncover fraud and corruption and abuse in the state of New Hampshire. And we were very, very, very sad to hear of his passing earlier this year. John Irish was another good friend of the 603 Alliance, a great patriot. He did sound for many of our events, gave a lot of his time, also did a lot of work with the Boston Broadside down in Massachusetts. We lost John in the past year as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge those two. I want to thank them. And I'd ask everybody to just join me in a moment of silence for Ed Nail and John Irish. And we pray for them to rest in peace.
Thank you. So if you want to go out and take your seat, and now the drill for, by the way, the bar I think is still open if anybody is still thirsty. You all have a place card.
Yes.
And I'd like you to pick that up and take it with you. You're going to line up over here and go through these doors so that people can get lined up. Joe, can you help people get lined up over there? And bring your place card with you. You don't have to take all your stuff because you can come back in here. But you're going to be given a book, and let's move through the line very quickly because James has another engagement today, and we want to try to get through this very quickly. If you present your card when you go up for your book and you're signing, it'll make it so much easier that he sees who he's making the book out to. All right? Oh, no time for pictures, please. No time for pictures today. You may buy extra books if you need a book to take home with you for a friend. However, we will not have time to have all those books signed. But you may buy a second book for $20, which is a great reduction from the store press. Thank you.